Welcome, everybody, back to the Chill Like a Mother podcast. I'm Kayla Huszar, the host. I am a registered social worker, creative coach, and counselor for parents. I wear a little bit of a different hat. I'm trained in expressive arts therapy, and today we are here with Caitlin, and we are going to talk about what it is like to parent highly sensitive children. And as therapists, what are our top kind of resources or things that we like to share with our clients and people in our circles that really make a difference when we are parenting as a highly sensitive person or parenting a highly sensitive child, and or the combination of both? Both.
Yes.
Welcome, Caitlin.
Yes. Well, thank you for having me.
Yes, thank you so much for being here. What is your personal connection with being passionate about talking about highly sensitive children or highly sensitive people?
Yes. So I really dove into what is a highly sensitive child when my son was maybe about 2 to 3. I really noticed that he just felt emotions so much bigger than what I saw other kids feeling. And at first I was thinking, okay, he's just shy or anxious, but he really gets, overwhelmed in some of those big social situations. Things feel really loud to him, and his emotions when he expresses them are very, very big. And then as I reflect back and I think of myself, then I'm like, oh, I think I probably have some of those traits as well, more on the feeling things so deeply side, not necessarily being overstimulated, but I'm overstimulated now that I have kids, but feeling things very, very deeply and being affected by things that you see in the world, right? Really sad stories, sad news. I would find that I would be really, really affected by those.
And what did you find at that time? How did you implement the things you were learning into practice? And then did it make a difference?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So I know for myself, when my child was first these big emotions, he's not running around with all the other kids. He's not the first kid in the bouncy house with all the other kids. He kind of hangs back. And I was thinking, I'm like, okay, what's wrong with him? Is there something wrong? I was trying to find a solution to the oh, this isn't what I see the other kids doing. So when I really did some research, read Elaine Aron's book, who is the founder of the term the highly sensitive person, and she is the one who really coined the term and let us know what highly sensitive people are. And really it's not a mental health disorder. It really is just a temperament. And it's seen around research estimates between 20 and 30% of the world is highly sensitive, and it's across cultures. So it's not just in North America or Canada. It's very much seen across the world that there is these people that have just a more attuned, a more sensitive temperament. And even in animals too. And I think everybody kind of remembers maybe a dog or a cat or something that just seemed to feel things a little bit more, was just a little more maybe overstimulated or slow to warm up. So it's really it cuts across so many things. And it's the biggest piece is it's a temperament. It's not something that we can really shift or change, but there are strategies that make it a lot easier for highly sensitive people to thrive rather than struggle and think oh, there's something wrong with me. So I think what helped me was just learning about what highly sensitive people are, and Elaine Aron's work, and some podcasts, some books. There was another great researcher out there that he also studied highly sensitive people. I can't remember what his name is, but he has a TED Talk where he talks about himself, who is this world-renowned pediatrician, long marriage, has done really, really well. in his life. And then he has a sister that's very, very close in age that has had like significant like mental health struggles throughout the years. And he said once he got older, he's like, he really wanted to understand, like, we were both raised by the same parents, and like parents in the 50s or 60s, it's your stereotypical, like more punishment, just like harsher parents. And he's like, why did I thrive so much? And my sister just struggled so much. And we both relatively had the same childhood. And he used the term highly sensitive people as being orchids, right? Needing that right environment to thrive and really do well, feeling understood, feeling accepted. And himself, he's like, I was like a dandelion. I could kind of just like, you know what, thrive in whatever kind of environment. And I was okay. So that the type of parents that he had that were just more harsh and punitive, that was fine for him. It really didn't affect him that much. But for his sister, who is highly sensitive, that type of harsh parenting will make those symptoms come out, like the depression, the negative self-talk, that will just become larger. So yeah, the study is, if highly sensitive kids are given like the right environment, and it doesn't have to be, you don't have to be perfect, but you understand it, you accept it, and you kind of, you know what can we do to kind of help you, then they are more likely to thrive. Right? Whereas like dandelions, they'll be good wherever, but given the right environment, the orchids will thrive.
Oh, I love that analogy. And there was another analogy that just came to me. Oh, yes, that your highly sensitive children are like the barometer for your home, right? And so if something is off just a little bit, or your tone, or you say something in a different way today than yesterday, like they are on it. Like they watch, they sense, they feel. And I feel that so much in my own highly sensitive home, of like, I have one kid who can like tolerate a little bit of that like sharper tone, like it doesn't affect him as much. And then I have another kid who's like words haven't even exited my mouth yet. It's just like the energy has changed around the parenting or the communication. It's like he knows. Like he already knows. And it's like, he just has such a sense for that energy shift or that tone change. Like, well, why are you saying it like this today when you said it like this yesterday? Or like, yeah,
they really are so attuned to those pieces and those subtleties, and they observe more, right? Even like body language, things like that. I know with my kiddo, I think it was a couple days ago, but he's like, "Are you mad?" And I'm like, "No, not really." He's like, "Oh, the way you like closed like the cupboard door. It's like, seemed like you were mad." I'm like, "No, I'm not. I'm not mad. Maybe I just closed it. That's what I usually do. I don't know." But yeah, they just really observe, which is really fantastic that they like, you know what, they take things in before like acting or deciding what to do. But it's also not necessarily the norm in childhood, right? Where you have the kids that are like running around like crazy when they first get into the play center, and then you have some kiddos that are just like, yeah, that just seems like too much right now. And it doesn't mean that there's anything wrong with them. It's just that their temperament and their body is saying like, not for me, not right now. They're more attuned to what they're feeling too, which is really something to be acknowledged and celebrated, because that's what we want, is people to be attuned with what they're feeling, rather than just, I have no idea what I'm feeling, I'm just going to push it to the side and pretend like everything's okay, right?
Yeah.
So there's a lot of gifts that highly sensitive kids have.
Absolutely. What would you say to a parent who was sitting in front of you who was really finding navigating this temperament and modern parenting challenging? Like, and I'll give you, for example, my highly sensitive child cannot tolerate when I talk to him in that like really gentle tone, right? He's just like, yes, of course I'm mad, It's just,
It almost seems condescending, hey? Whereas like,
yes,
don't like gentle parent me,
yes.
for example.
And he has like said that to me. He's been
Mhm.
like, you need to just let me do this. Stop naming my feelings. Stop, like stop,
Yeah, yeah,
basically.
yeah.
And
It feels like, yeah.
so it felt really hard for me to want to parent in a more attachment based way,
Mhm.
but not know how to navigate that the highly sensitive temperament in that same sphere, right? And so I found it really challenging because it's like this is what I naturally want to do or what the books tell me to do, and you're
Mhm.
rejecting it,
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's so my kid, and it's a lot of highly sensitive kids. Whereas he doesn't like to talk about what he's feeling. It's like he will reject all of that. Whereas my other girl, she's like, she'll just come up to me. She's like, I'm disappointed. Like, oh, okay, why are you disappointed? And she'll be totally fine with just talking about it. Whereas my boy is like, don't say any feeling words. So I just know that even though I want to, it's going to be pushback. So the dance is, how do you kind of deal with that underlying feeling without directly addressing it? And then you don't want to just necessarily like, okay, I guess we're just never going to talk about it again. That's not a solution either. So I find that like with my kiddo, he loves stories. So I tell a lot of stories about myself when I was younger, about my brother, about Nana, about Papa, because kids just, they naturally just love stories. And he's just like, oh, and then what did you do? Oh, and Uncle did that. And then I will like narrate some things that are somewhat similar to what he's experiencing, whether it's a friend hurt his feelings or he felt like left out at the playground. I won't directly say like, how did that feel when so and so like ran away? But it's like, oh, I remember when that happened, and oh, I felt really, really like upset and sad. And then I talked to Nana about it, and we talked about maybe some ways that I could feel a little bit better, and we just go about it. I just go about it a different way because I know that it'll just like I'll never get anywhere. It's like, yeah, I'm beating my head against the wall. It's like not going to work. But stories, because kids love stories, and my kid especially, just he loves stories. And it's also that connection of like, ooh, like this is what happened to mom when she was little, or what happened to uncle or dad or whatever. So he's just more interested, because it's always fun to stories about your parents when they were little. Even like I like to hear stories about my parents when they were little. It's just interesting, I think. So that's how we kind of like work around that. Sometimes there's pieces where it's like, ooh, something happened where I know like it's bothering him, or I know something happened, but I actually don't know what happened. So for example, during spring hockey, he was told that I think they didn't love it. They were gonna bench him if he like didn't pass or took the puck from like one of his teammates or something. I don't know. He was 7. Like they're just learning. And we knew something was going on because even his, like, he pulled back during his play and everything. And then I could tell afterwards, like something was going on, but I had no idea what was going on. So in the car, we were going for a drive, and I think we went somewhere like a McDonald's or something. And then I'm like, you seem like really upset or really sad right now. And it took him a little while. And then he's like, you know why I'm upset? This is what so-and-so said. So sometimes if it's like, I don't know what happened, but I know something did, then we'll just kind of bring it down, make it very like non-threatening, and like in the car, right? Everybody finds it easier to talk in a car or going for a walk or playing, because play is really how kids process and like learn and feel safer expressing things. So Yeah. But
Mhm.
it's a dance,
Yeah.
right? Because they will often like reject those, like, what are you feeling? "Eh, nothing. Go
Yes.
away."
Nothing. Or
Yeah.
like what happens to me now is I'll like mislabel the feeling, right? I'll interpret it as like anger or disappointment or something, and then he'll be like, "That's not what I'm feeling."
Yeah.
It's
Which
like,
is so good because he's like,
okay.
no, no, that's
Yeah.
wrong. My daughter's really good with that. I'm like, oh, are you sad? She's like, no, I'm mad. I'm like, oh, well, you see the difference, which is really
Yes.
the goal. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Um, the storytelling is really interesting to me. I read a book called Playful Parenting. It was written by an American researcher, psychologist, and the whole book is how to approach. He doesn't name highly sensitive children necessarily, but just like children with difficult temperaments, like how do you reach them, how do you guide them, how do you teach them skills if they are resistant to the verbal, the type of verbal communication that we're just so used to.
Right.
And he had this example of working with some really difficult children, and one of the children had come to session and had like shot him with a Nerf gun, and it was like out of anger. And
Mm,
he knew it was out of anger, and he could like read between the lines about all these things that this child was experiencing. And he called it like a love dart or something. And so instead of being mad at the child for expressing himself
hmm
that way, he was like, "Oh, you've hit me with your love dart. You love me so much, and I care about you." And so he just like he made
hmm
it kind of goofy
Yeah.
and
Reframed
fun,
it. Yeah.
like totally reframed it and like diffused the situation, because he names in the book that like had I come in there and been like, "You haven't seen me for a week. I'm here. Your mom said this, and you need to be present, and you can't be shooting me
hmm
with Nerf guns." Like, I know that was out of anger. It would have totally
Yeah.
changed and probably ruined the relationship dynamic that they have, right? And
Absolutely.
so,
Yeah.
like thinking about this from a parenting lens, which true story, I have been harsh with my children. It's impossible not to.
It's, oh, of
Um,
course. Yeah.
but when I am able to access that sense of play or
Mhm.
story or engaging in whatever narrative they're kind of trying to play out, it can really help process the emotion or the feeling without the heated, "You
hmm
did this, you shouldn't be doing this,
Shame.
I know that you're
Yeah.
angry," like,
Yeah. It takes the harshness out of it because the kid's there with this like "Ugh," anger. And if he would have been met with even, I mean, you could have set a boundary then, and maybe it would have been fine, but he probably wouldn't have gotten where he got to within
mhm,
that session.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
It's
And
really
there's a couple other skills and resources that I pull from that. Um, one of like if your child like storms away and slams the door, and they don't want to talk to you, is to like put little love notes like under the door. And I did that once. It was like the middle of the pandemic. Things were really rough, and I just simply said the wrong thing at the wrong
Mhm.
time to my highly sensitive kiddo, and I actually think he was for it, and stormed off down to his room, slammed the door, continued to slam around in his room.
Uh-huh.
And I so badly wanted to like open the door and, do
And
do
just
that natural tendency,
to take
of like
control of like,
take
you're not
control,
doing
and right, that was disrespectful and you better respect me and all the things. But instead, I had that pause moment and I cut up these little pieces of construction paper, and he couldn't read at the time. So it was very um, short words, with like some
Mhm.
pictures on it. But I just wrote like, "I love you," and then put it under the door, and then another one with a heart and put it under the door. And then I just waited just to see how he would react, because I heard the slamming stop
Yeah.
when I put the note under the door. And all of a sudden he was like, "How do I spell something?" And then he wrote on the back of the note and then put it back to me. And
Yeah.
the first one was like, "I'm mad at you," in his like kindergarten letters and words. And then I put another one under, and then I think I like drew a dinosaur or something and put it under. And then finally we had this like note exchange of like, I'm mad at you, but then eventually he did write like, I love you too, or, something like that. And it
so
totally diffused the situation, even though I so badly wanted to go in and just like, you cannot do that. Like, that is not okay. That's not how we treat people, like all the things.
Yeah.
But what ended up happening is through that like diffused energy, we were able to like circle back and actually get to the root of the thing, which is that he didn't like the way that I'd said something to him. And I was like, yeah, you know what? Like now that I have context and thinking about it in perspective and we've like connected in this way, I was like, yeah, that was really harsh of me.
And really that repair of coming back and circling back to the original like moment of disconnection. And we're not always going to get it right, but then it's like, what moments can we take where, it could have been, you're not doing that to me. And he's like, again, like slamming things. And it just like goes and goes and goes until like somebody really like loses it. And then it's like, here we are, like this huge issue. And really it was like, ooh, okay, that tone that was like hurtful. But he couldn't necessarily access that because he was younger and maybe didn't necessarily have the words to say what he needed to say. But yeah, you got there knowing the skills that he had and what would calm his little body down, his little nervous system down. And also that time, and when we do like the notes, and I'm a big fan of like notes or like, hearts or things like that, because it also helps them kind of access their a little bit of a logical brain when they're in the big, huge, like meltdown emotions. So I'm a huge fan of like little notes or like, any sort of like creative outlet too, which is your bread and butter, right? Just to move that energy. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Such a good example.
Thank you. What do you want parents of highly sensitive children to know?
Gosh, there's so much, but I think like the top couple things is that like your child is not choosing to be like dramatic or difficult or like pull back or anything that is kind of like negative, right? They're not choosing to be like, another one is dramatic, or like one that I hate is like a crybaby, right? They're not choosing to, feel their feelings so big. That's their temperament, right? How some people are just born naturally, like, not outgoing and extroverted, and some people are just more introverted, right? That's temperament inherently. And if we can kind of acknowledge that and see it as something that can be like very, very positive, and they're more attuned, they're more aware, they can often be more creative as well. It can be such a great skill to really, or temperament to really have going forward, and can be something that serves them well into their teenage years when we're all doing some things that are maybe not the best, right? They can trust their like inner voice, their inner sensations of like, yeah, I'm not gonna do that. And when we tell them to trust themselves and like, hey, you know what, you can trust that feeling, and that's not bad. You don't need to like push past it or override it. Then you are building people that are just more ready to kind of like be in the world. Because the world's not perfect. Things will be overwhelming. Things will be frustrating. But then they will also know how to cope, and that what they're feeling, it's like, it's okay to have feelings. But then we also, teach that regulation and how they can acknowledge and express their feelings in healthy ways. And I think with highly sensitive kids, it just has to happen. It happens earlier because it just, presents earlier, and parents are like, what is happening? So it just comes up earlier. Everybody has to learn emotional regulation throughout their life, but I think with highly sensitive kids, we see that, okay, we got to really like hone in on these skills a little bit earlier.
Yes, absolutely. And so if a parent is looking for support, where can people reach out to you, Caitlin?
Yes, so I am online at Mama Psychologist and also at Couples to Cradles Counseling, where we do have therapists that work with highly sensitive kids and the parents of highly sensitive kids.
Thank you so much for being here and sharing your wisdom and pieces of your time and yourself with us today.
Yes, thank you.